Okay, hello YouTube. Today we're going to be talking about castling, and more specifically we're going to be talking about kind of early castling and what you should do and what you shouldn't do once you've castled early in the opening. So we're going to start out with the Italian game, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. We're in the Italian game, and then we're going to have bishop c5. We're going to be in the Joko piano. So right here, like if you take a look at this master's database, the move castles kingside has actually been played quite a few times, even by masters. And this move, castles kingside, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. You can look at the computer assessment here. It still gives slight edge white, and of course castles kingside is a perfectly acceptable move. But one thing that you do have to be aware of here is there's this rule. It goes all the way back to just like the classical beginnings of chess. Emanuel Lasker kind of put forward this rule. He said an attack on the wing is best countered by an attack in the middle of the board, or basically by some sort of counter in the center. And this is because the center of the board is the most important area of the board. That's these 16 squares right here. If you control that, you control everything. And of course, the center of the board, the reason it's so important is it's not just because your pieces control more territory in the middle, which they do. A knight would control 8 squares in the middle and only 2 in the corner. A bishop controls 13 squares in the middle of the board, the very center, and it only controls, I think it's 7 in the corner. So it controls 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, I did remember that correctly. And it also progressively controls more as it moves up the board. So as it gets closer to the center, it progressively controls more squares. So here it would, on B2, it would control 9, 11, 13. So the pieces control more territory when they get to the middle, but also the center is an important strategic location. From the center of the board, you can get anywhere. So if your pieces are located in the middle, they can get to the queen side, they can get to the king side, they can get to anywhere on the board. So if somebody is attacking you on the wing, and they're going after your king's castled position, because now they know your king's address. And this is something that happens when you castle, that you're not always thinking about when you castle early in the opening, is you're giving your opponent your king's address. Now he knows where to attack your king. He knows where your king is going to be forever. He knows your king is going to be located on the king side. He can't magically evacuate to the queen side at some point during the attack. So the possibility of a wing attack has just gone up. But as long as you can counter in the middle of the board, the threat of a wing attack is basically non-existent. Because if he starts attacking you on the wing right now, he's going to get hit in the middle. Like, let's say that we have some craziness. Like, let's say that g5 gets played right away. The assessment just went way up for white. Why? Because this central thrust, there's this move, pawn to d4, that can get played immediately, which attacks the bishop, attacks the pawn on e5, and attacks the bishop on g5. And this is what I'm talking about. We can get to the wing from the middle of the board. We're using the center to get to the wing. And actually, we would have the winning attack. White would have the winning attack. We would play knight g5, knight h6, knight takes f7, or even e5, but even knight takes f7 is possible. When after knight takes f7, bishop takes f7, king takes f7, queen h5 check. And notice, because we have this basically clear-cut forest in the middle of the board, we're hitting this king, and we're picking up this bishop on c5. So now king g8, queen c5, winning advantage for white. So an early wing attack against my castled king is not even remotely a threat right now. But we do have to be careful when we're playing the white pieces. There's certain moves that we don't want to make if we've castled over here. For one thing, we have to be careful about stabilizing the center. Basically, we've got to be very careful about making it impossible for us to play d4. That's why I always kind of recommend, like especially like lower level players, like after something like knight f6, I recommend, hey, why not play something like, just d3 in this position, and then after d6 immediately play c3. Now you know you're safe, because now d4 is always on the table, and it's never going to be off the table. Now you can just continue your development kind of normally. You can play rook e1, h3, knight g2, knight f1, knight g3, eventually play pawn to d4. You're going to have a good position with white kind of no matter what happens, because you're not going to be subject to any type of weird wing attack. But a lot of players will start stabilizing their center. They start playing moves like after d3, d6, they play a move like knight c3. And this still is not a mistake, because you can get away with knight c3 with the idea of knight d5, and then you can play pawn c3, and as long as you can still hit in the middle of the board with d4 at some point, your position is still perfectly acceptable with the white pieces. But a lot of people will follow this up. Like, let's say that black just plays a simple stabilizing move, like a6, to give his bishop some retreat, because maybe he was worried that knight a5 was an attempt at playing knight a4 and picking up the bishop pair. So he's giving his bishop some retreat, so it's a reasonable move. So a6, this move bishop g5 would actually be a mistake. Notice that white still has a slight edge, like on the computer assessment. Notice after bishop g5 that immediately drops to equality. We still have this move in the master's database, but notice the score for black right after the move h6. Black is either drawing or winning after h6. And there's, of course, a really good reason for this. Is after h6, there really is only one good move, and that's bishop takes f6. You have to give up the bishop pair. And the position is still mostly reasonable, like after bishop takes f6, queen f6, because your idea is knight d5, queen d8, and then, of course, pawn to c3, and you have some compensation in the middle of the board. But if you play the other move, the other kind of natural-looking move, bishop h4, your position is nearly lost just because they have your king's address. Your king is castled. And the center of the board is stable, which means that white cannot play c3 and d4 fast enough to do anything about this attack that's happening over here on the king side. And because of that, white is going to get crushed on the king side long before he ever gets a chance to play c3 and d4. And basically that's what is translating into this computer assessment of basically up a pawn for black. So black is doing much, much better here. This can also happen when, white doesn't follow any type of opening principle whatsoever. It can also happen when white blocks his center with a move like bishop d3 really early in the opening. Like knight f6, I actually played this game years ago, and then say castles kingside. You can see the assessment's still pretty equal here. Bishop c5, and I talk about this position actually in another video. But years ago I had somebody play h3, and I was already starting to kind of become suspicious that maybe he didn't intend to do anything intelligent or ambitious. And then after rook e1, I just continued with the normal safety move a6. Interestingly enough, like maybe the best move objectively is just to castle in this position, which is the move that I give in another video. I recommend castling. But I was kind of suspicious that he was going to do something kind of weird. So I played a6, and I was right. He actually played this move pawn to c3, and that super stabilized his center because it's just going to take him way too long to ever play c3 and d4. And actually, a6 on my part was a little bit of a clever kind of move. I wasn't just giving my bishop retreat. I was also preventing the move bishop to b5. And basically the idea is right here, g5 is possible. And g5 actually leads to advantage black. This is actually slight edge black. Black is starting to whip up a winning attack at this point. And the reason for it is there is absolutely no way to counter this move g5 other than just trying to passively defend your king side somehow. You can't take it. Like if knight takes g5, we're going to have just simple chess. Like we could just play something like rook g8, just going after this knight. And of course, if the knight retreats, we're going to have, the computer likes knight h5. It is also possible to just play bishop takes h3 with the pretty equally winning attack for black. You can notice the computer's giving like somewhere between +2 and +3 here. So these are things you have to be careful about. Like once you give your opponent your king's address, like once you castle, you do kind of want to keep in mind that at some point you're going to want to be striking in the middle with c3 and d4. Now that doesn't mean that you can't play certain moves. It does mean that you have to be very careful about your move orders. So like after castles, knight f6, d3, d6, knight c3 is not off the table, but keep in mind when you play knight c3, your idea is not to immediately follow up with bishop g5. Your idea is knight d5, with the idea of planting this pawn on c3 pretty much as quickly as possible. Your idea is like, say, after even h6, the best move according to the engine is something like pawn to c3, and actually the best move according to the master's database, but it's something like pawn to c3 with the idea of following up with something like d4. And now, as you can see, we're getting into some top-level games now. We have, somebody played this against Mamanjarov. Fedosev played this against Mamanjarov. This is two 2700s going at it in this position, and the computer's giving slight edge white. This is a completely legitimate way to play chess. But whenever you castle early, keep in mind, always be ready to counter in the middle of the board, because if your opponent has not castled yet, a wing attack is possible. So, whenever you castle early, be prepared to counter in the center. And that's kind of the theme of this video. So, I hope that you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess, and I hope you can use some of these ideas in your own games. Thank you very much for watching.